unlike my ability to connect a ThinkPad to a projector. So, I'm Matt Trout. Quite a few of you probably already know me. I'm fairly significantly involved in the CPAN and perl5 community. Spend most of my time hacking on a web framework called Catalyst and database layer called DBIX class. Also get involved quite a bit with a thing called the Moose Meta model, which is basically a full meta object protocol and object system that's rapidly sort of taking over being used for new perl5 now. The company I work for is Shadowcat, which Mark is also from. And we basically spend our time helping customers argue with web development projects, do architecture deployment, so on and so forth. Now, this talk was originally designed for the Postgres West conference, which is over in Portland, meetup of users of the Postgres database, and the organizer said, you're a Perl guy, do you want to do a perl6 update? And I'm like, well, no, because I'm living in the real world, so we don't really care about perl6. But I'll tell you about all the stuff we're actually using, if you like. And it's like, people go, isn't Perl dying? Is it, oh no, isn't it some legacy language that nobody uses for new projects anymore? And they go, oh look, you can't see it noticeably on Netcraft. Well, for a start, that's because PHP stuff's an X-powered by header into all of your web pages. So everybody knows if you're running PHP. This, by the way, is really useful if you want to find insecure PHP stuff to break into. Other than that, I don't see that it actually provides any utility to the users of the software. So most Perl software, because it's designed to be used by people who actually have a clue, doesn't advertise all of your versions of things in the request. So it tends to be a lot harder to detect. But there's definitely been an upswing in the number of jobs that have been available for Perl recently. And the release rate of open source projects to CPAN is still going up. And perl5 powers all sorts of stuff. 6 Apart's blogging system, Vox, a social network called Tackle, there's various other bits and pieces. The BBC iPlayer is built on a modern Perl stack. And those of you who don't want to believe in such things can look away now, but it's the 42nd largest site in the world and it's running on Perl. So, and yeah, okay. 10 years ago, Perl was starting to look a little wobbly. 8 years ago, quite wobbly. What kind of happened was everybody was sort of sat around, because perl6 was supposed to be just around the corner. And so, they kept saying perl6 is going to be released on Christmas, but we won't tell you which Christmas, and it still wasn't out, and it still wasn't out. So as a collective community, we sort of made a decision, which was to move onwards and upwards. And people started looking at all the stuff that had been happening in other places over the past few years and thinking about it, and actually starting to use this stuff and to build it out in on top of the perl5 base. Because what you've got is a language community that has been around for many years and has accumulated a lot of ideas and a lot of people. Currently we've been watching the Ruby and Rails communities make basically the same mistakes that we did about 10 years ago, and that are now anathema to any modern Perl developer. But they're going to have to learn the lesson for themselves. Everybody does, it seems. But there's a lot of stuff around deployment. CPAN, for all that people may hate it, is an extremely mature means of software installation and management. And because Perl has always been often a glue language, there's a lot of developers who are able to use multiple languages, taking ideas from other places and sort of moving stuff back and forth. I'll go through a few of this. And the other thing is, we are still acquiring new people at a decent rate. And every time these new people come in, they've worked with other stuff, they've got some ideas, and while yes, Perl has more than one way to do it, and everybody goes, oh no, now there's too much choice and I can't work out which to do, it means that another way to do it that might be better than the old ones can come in and get looked at a lot more easily. And I mean, this doesn't look like a dying language to me. 100 uploads a month of new software to CPAN in 2003. Last year it was about 750 a month, so yeah. dying on it. And there's people, the biggest obstacle, to be honest, to actually signing up to people getting new software onto CPAN at the moment is the fact that there's more people looking to actually sign up and contribute stuff than there is time for the volunteers who approve the sign-ups. Companies are saying that they actually want to scale up their Perl development programs and start even more new projects. But their problem is that because of all the various insulting of Perl that's gone on over the past few years, they're having trouble finding sort of mid-level and above developers who are willing to have a go. And it's insane. perl5 version 10 came out last year. It's faster. The regular expression engine is once again setting the gold standard for doing such things. The people who've been whinging for years that there's no switch statement, well, now there is one. Have a nice day. Smart Match allows you to do polymorphic matching between multiple different types of variables in a very elegant way, and it's operator overloadable, so you can customize it for a low code basis. A defined OR operator, which seems like a tiny thing, but significantly reduces the noise in code that's dealing with potentially partial input. The say built-in, which is a much smarter print designed to provide the common case of just wanting to output some data rather than having fine control. And we noticed that the way that Perl handled method searches in terms of object dispatch was, well, you know, Python had done it better, so we stole the way that Python did it and provided it as an option in 5.10. And funnily enough, in the grand spirit of Perl being forwards compatible as well as backwards, provided you load a module called MRO compat, that gets emulated on perl5 version 8 just while it's native in 5.10. CPAN Plus has now made it into the core, which is a huge advance in terms of module installation. Module builders in core, which probably gets rid of the single most common cause of CPAN installation failures. And Vanilla Perl now finally provides a first-class Perl for Win32. And coming out of that is the Perl on a Stick project, which means that you can actually basically have a USB key with a Perl on it, plug it into any Windows system and start running applications. One of the guys that I talk to regularly is using that to distribute a Perl web application plus a copy of Firefox that starts up pointing straight to the application for non-technical users. And the nice thing about Perl is, because of the sheer flexibility, you end up very multi-paradigm. You can do very much functional stuff. You can do currying type tricks. And people are starting to build nicer syntaxes for that into the language. So you can build curry routines and do basically the Haskell-style auto-currying very elegantly. If you're looking at laziness, you can do lazy resolution, which resolves a value every time it's used, and deferred, which means calculated once and then hang on to the result. There were some people who looked at Erlang and thought, that's an interesting idea. Anybody here looked at the Erlang stuff at all? No? Alright, well, if you ever do look at Erlang stuff, you'll find that actually looks quite similar to the way Erlang's message passing handles high concurrency stuff. There's a web framework called Continuity, which is, it's fairly niche, but it's exploring doing continuation-based web development in the same way as the Smalltalk Seaside system, which won't display properly on. Yeah, well done. There we go. So you're able to basically say request next actually goes back to the browser, and your code resumes the next time the user clicks a link for exactly where it started. And to you, you know, that was all inline, even if it took them half an hour to click the link. And perl5, with the amount of practice we've had now, it scales. It's actually pretty damn fast for a dynamic language. People always refer to it as interpreted. It isn't. perl5 actually compiles down to basically a stack-based opcode virtual machine that it runs on. If you want to be more accurate, it's 2, because there's a second op VM in there, that's purely present to handle the regular expression engine, which is why the regular expression engine is so screamingly fast. Tim Bray's wide finder project to try and do parallelism across a huge number of cores was actually won by a 25-line Perl script, because they did something very simple. Standard Unix IPC spawned a bunch of processes and just spawned a copy of Perl per core, and it screamed through the data processing. And Perl handles large applications, provided you've got a decent development methodology and some actual coding conventions. But I mean, you need that for any large project. I've seen 20,000 line Perl projects that have been perfectly maintainable. And okay, the enterprise Java people will go, that's tiny. Well, yeah, except if you're going much beyond that, a large project realistically has to be a bunch of small to medium-sized projects that talk through APIs, or, well, you end up with enterprise Java. And Perl will handle large teams. We've had clients who were looking at 10 developers working concurrently on a single dev box, all with separate environments and managing to integrate their code fine. Perl Critic allows you to not only have coding conventions, but to actually do static analysis of the source that will enforce those coding conventions and flag up when people are missing them. The SVK subversion front end provides offline development, but more importantly, at least to me, provides decent branch and merge support. Subversion has only just, in the latest release, got some form of built-in merging support. And the stuff in SVK has been production tested for 4 or 5 years, so let's say I'm not looking at moving anytime soon. We'll give subversions a couple of years to shake out. And you've got things like local lib that make it possible for each user or even each deployment on a given system to have its entire own tree of dependencies, which I think compares to the deployment model of Maven, but I'm not a Java expert, so I can't quite say. But it makes it a lot easier for people to collaborate, try different versions of libraries, not tread on each other's toes. And the explicit module loading that Perl involves means that you can analyze for dependencies. It means things are in predictable locations. You then specify your dependencies in a thing called a makefile.pl, which is the equivalent of an AutoTools configure script. And that means that you've got full deployment information. And in terms of deploying to multiple systems, there's various Perl-centric ways if you want to be operating system-centric. CPAN Plus will build Debian packages. The CPAN spec script uses a bunch of the same tools to build RPMs. Profiling large scale, Devil MYT Prof was the reason for the name, is it was sponsored by the New York Times because they use a huge amount of Perl on the back end to handle a load of their data processing. And that allowed them to find bottlenecks and eliminate them. And people go, oh, Perl's OO is terrible. Well, no. The built-in perl5 OO is not an object model. It is, here are the tools with which to build an object model. And over the years, there have been at least half a dozen of them that I know of. And the one that appears to be winning now is one called Moose, which basically the author looked at all the interesting bits of Perl 6, Ruby, Smalltalk, all sorts of other things, and, well, we stole them. So you've got nice attribute definitions that auto-generate the accessor methods, but also can validate attributes, and it's very easy to extend the attribute meta protocol to add things like somebody's working on an extension that does full transaction capability across the object data. You have method modifiers that allow you to wrap methods in the superclass in an elegant fashion. And you've also got a role model. Roles are kind of an interface with state. It's kind of the union of interface and mixing, but on steroids with much better rules. There's a lot of research that came out of the Smalltalk community, but never quite caught on in the mainstream, sadly. So you can say, you have to provide these methods in the same way as an interface would, but then you can provide other parts of methods yourself. So you get horizontal composition of functionality rather than the vertical composition that inheritance is. makes it a lot easier to design large systems and keep everything cleanly factored. And because you've got a meta protocol, it's very possible to introspect this stuff, which means, for example, there's code that I use on a regular basis that asks an object, what are your attributes? And can automatically build a create form and a list view and your basic standard data entry stuff, just by looking at the class. Because it just says to the class, what do you need? Name's a string, okay, I'll put up a text box. That's an image object, well, I'm going to need an upload field, so on and so forth. And the nice thing about the role system is that you can actually reason formally about composition in a way that is a lot harder to do with multiple inheritance or with mixins. Because mixins tend to just stuff things into the available space, which you get all sorts of problems with clashes and stuff. Ruby is kind of typical for this. There's all sorts of fun they have where they end up renaming methods in order to not have clashes. And we're also looking at actually extending the language, adding things like method signatures, and there's going to be introspection on that as well. And that stuff is actually built into Perl itself. So, right, I do actually, by my reckoning I've been going 15 minutes, by the way. I was watching it.
As I said, 5 minutes left.
Oh, I assumed you were just waving.
Yeah, 5 minutes left.
Nobody else ever remembers to count.
I'm not everybody else.
You're not. You're too organised to be a conference organiser. Anyway, so but the other thing is Perl is still highly usable for scripting. I mean that you're looking at reading a file in, copying a file, edit a single line, record splitting in a very small amount of code. So you can do things in one-liners or a 10-line script that would be 25, 30 lines in anything else. For email usage, we have, I mean, that you can look at that piece of code and you can see exactly what it's actually doing. And it makes simple scripting so much easier to work with. And the other thing is, Perl has got an amazing flexibility when it comes to actually testing the code. The TAP, the Test Anything protocol, is such a standard that Apache uses it for its test outputs, and a bunch of continuous integration tools support it as well as various XML forms. There's actually now involvement with the IATF to turn that into an RFC for a standard test to fully standardize it. And it's trivial to add various bits and pieces of testing. You can check simple conditions, check equality, check regex matches, and then you look at more powerful things built on top of the same infrastructure that allows you to check that exceptions weren't thrown and do deep compares on structures with useful diagnostics when things go wrong. And because of the flexibility of the Perl dispatch system, that's literally all you need to generate a mock object. So you can basically implement 2 or 3 methods on a mock, inlining your test without having to declare a class and just throw that object around. And the other nice thing about perl5 is, if it doesn't do quite what you want, you can often extend the language in such a way as it does. So method signatures is actually a module written in Perl that hooks into the parsing and adds the additional keyword. So people have been experimenting with that. There's now 3 signatures modules. A relatively simple one, which is method signatures simple. The original method signatures is, well, the author thinks it's a research project into future syntax for Perl. Some of us are a bit skeptical of that so far because he seems to have gone for too many features. But and there's one that integrates with Moose and into the Moose type system, so you get full rich signatures with metamodel introspection. And we're also more and more improving the type system, so you're able to at least do type checking. We can't do compile time static type analysis yet, but it is very possible. And somebody else is covering Enlightened Perl, so I'm going to stop there. Cheers, people.